If you had to teach just one breathing technique, what would it be?
Great question. There's many out there. I always resort to just an even inhale, even exhale. We live in a very stressed out, chaotic, noisy, distracted world. And, I always come back to a parasympathetic breath. You know, really in the simplest form, breathing 4 counts in, 4 counts out, in through the nose, out through the mouth. 10, 20 of those breaths will reset your nervous system and bring you back to a state of equilibrium.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Have you found, are there any breathing techniques you've experienced where, certain individuals, it might be too much from them? What comes to mind is Wim Hof. I think I've heard that for some people diving straight into the Wim Hof technique, it might actually give them anxiety. Do you have any thoughts in that area?
Yeah, so I basically break down the breath in 2 ways: parasympathetic and sympathetic. The more fast paced breathing, some Wim Hof, holotropic, transformational breathing. I mean, there's many different other breathing techniques that you can throw in there, are more sympathetic based, right? And any inhale and exhale out, in and out through the mouth can be quite activating. Now, there's a great purpose to that, and they actually can be quite beautiful for a transformational process of release of trauma and all of that. However, it can be quite confronting if you don't have a trained practitioner to assist you in that, and that's your first time doing it. So, again, for me, as starters, coming back to a parasympathetic breath, because we're living in a sympathetic state most of the time in this fight or flight state. So
Mhm.
it's really slowing things down is the key to coming back home and feeling deeper, more deeply connected to ourselves.
Yeah. And that theme, thank you for that theme. That theme rings true, like just the nature of living, right? Like in how we interact with our life and stuff. Obviously, you're well aware, right? Like it rings so true. But I think that so many of us we just forego the importance of breathing. We take it for granted or whatever. I'll say in my journey, the breathing techniques that I've gone to are the ones that just kind of stuck with me. I think I'm calling it right. Box breathing, right? When
Uh-huh.
it's in four, hold four, out four, hold four, that one, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then another one that I've recommended to clients that I've worked with, and I don't know if there's, one, the physiological side, but then just simply taking in a deep breath all the way through the nose and then kind of a sigh exhale and then just pausing and doing another one of those at your pace is what I'll say. What do you think about that? Is that good? Is that good advice or no?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the box breath is great for really slowing things down, and really it can really assist you at nighttime to go to sleep and really wind you down, the mind, the body, slow it all down. And then the second technique in which you describe more of a forceful exhale on the sigh. So
Mhm.
let's just break this down for a moment. What's the inhale and what's the exhale? The inhale is taking in life, right? You're filling yourself up, and the exhale is the release. So any tension that you're holding on to, any constriction, tightness, resistance, with that forceful exhale, it can really assist you in releasing and dissolving all of that very quickly. So there's benefits to all of them in so many different ways. So, I would say that's sound advice.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you, brother. So I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper into some breathing techniques to offer some value to whoever might be listening. But I also want to take a moment to go down kind of a little bit of more origin story just to understand, your history. And again, as I said, we already talked for a moment before we started recording. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience with me and whoever might be with us listening. So yeah, in terms of like the beginning, was it breath work that was the initial catalyst for you, or did you get on some form of a inward journey first and then discovered that? And what was it that you think was your breaking point, or what was it that was the moment where things really shifted for you? Like what was going on in that time?
Yeah, great question. We all have these catalyst moments, right? Where we're sort of thwarted into this new path in life. And for me, it was sort of a gradual process where I had received the book in 2008, Many Lives, Many Masters. And that was sort of a catalyst in its sense of really helping me to really validate and understand what I was already feeling about, reincarnation and all of these different topics that we might explore on our awakening path. And, from that point, I was still kind of in the status quo. I was sort of doing what I was told to do and going to school, getting my master's degree, working in the corporate world and all of that. And,
Mhm.
there was a breaking point in 2012 where I basically had just complete breakdown and was fully just overwhelmed by what I was doing and really was not satisfied at all. And I knew in my heart of hearts that there had to be another path. And so I was praying, I was asking for signs. Please show me a way out of this because I know this is not my life. I was 24 at the time. This is, 12 years ago, more than that. But long story short, I was driving down the highway one day and I look up and I see a billboard on the side of the road and it says, "Are you ready to answer the call?" And in the right hand corner, it said, "Sponsored by the Peace Corps." And at the
Mhm.
time, I had no clue what the Peace Corps was, but I went home and I Googled it and I started to do my research. And I found out that it was a volunteer, organization that you volunteer 2 years of your life and you go and live in another country. So immediately I was intrigued because not only was it fulfilling and checking the boxes of potentially helping other people, but also traveling and getting to experience the world.
Yeah.
And so I went through the application process, which took pretty much a year. And I was then accepted and sent an acceptance letter to serve in Tanzania, Africa for 2 years. And so that was a big turning point in my life. The book came first, and then this opportunity to go live in Tanzania, Africa, in the primal way of
Mhm.
living in community, living in the villages, no electricity, no running water. And so that really was the big start to my inward journey because I
Yeah.
couldn't no longer escape myself in any
You
way.
had to face it. Yeah.
I had to face it. I couldn't escape through the partying that I was doing and all of
Yeah.
the other stuff. I had
Yeah.
to go within. And
Yeah.
so those 2 years unfolded and I can basically have a whole conversation on that. But to keep it
Mhm.
short, there was a couple key defining moments during that time. I was starting to meditate. I was doing yoga. I was introduced to Kundalini yoga through this video someone had given me.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I actually had a near death experience on the Zambezi River in a whitewater rafting trip on New Year's Eve of 2014.
First,
And
real quick, I got to
go
say,
ahead.
like, that's something not to interject, that's something that I'm super, super fascinated with. In my realm of like trying to figure it out and figure out life, and come back to the drawing table, it only makes sense to look at things that aren't explained by science yet, right? And you learn more and more about near death experiences. And I mean, I'm not super proficient about it, but I know that there's different schools. I think one in Virginia has like over 4,000 case studies, and that there's science that's going into this area. Like, it's bananas, dude. So like whenever I meet someone that has one, so when you said that, I'm like, ah. So yeah, carry forth. But I just had to say that.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting. I was really fascinated by NDE's near death experiences before I actually had one.
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a lot of research and reading all these books, people getting struck by lightning and
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of crazy stuff and coming back from that. And so it was now my opportunity to have this near death experience, unbeknownst to myself. I was on a whitewater rafting trip and if anybody knows about the Zambezi River, it's a quite intense river. It's one of the most intense rivers in the world. And going into this, I was sort of an adrenaline junkie and I wanted to have this experience of rafting down this river. Well, we get about halfway down of I think there was about 25 or 26 rapids that day. And I get ejected from the boat and I fall out at the beginning of a class 5 rapid and there's nothing anybody could do. The boat is already taken off. I'm already in the rapid. And at this point, my survival mechanism kicks on. First, there's panic because I'm getting basically plunged under, taken up, plunged under, can barely breathe, taking in all of this water. And, what seems to be 5 minutes is probably only been 15 to 20 seconds.
Mhm.
I'm basically in this whirlpool and essentially beginning to panic fully,
Mhm.
where all of my anxiety is kicking in and I'm fighting for my life. 20, 30 seconds later, I'm coming back up, going back down, and now I'm sucked under and I start to lose consciousness. And all I remember, like all NDEs start, right? And they say there's a light that starts to appear. And my body, my lifeless body, started to sink down. And all of a sudden, my consciousness moves from this place of being aware to then having this bright light approach me. And I just felt this utterly deep peace and just the surrender that happened. And
Mhm.
this is all within a minute.
Mhm.
About, I don't know, again, time, it didn't, I didn't know what was happening in that space. But as I'm leaving my body, I start to feel this tug on me. And all of a sudden, I'm yanked back into my body, and someone pulls me out of the water, a kayaker, and I'm put
Mhm.
on the kayak, and I'm still somewhat unconscious and start pumping on my chest, and I'm spitting out water, spitting out water. And I just remember looking up at the sun and the blue sky, and I just started crying. And it was one of the most profound moments of my life, because in that moment, there was the deepest gratitude I've ever had for the life that I had.
Mhm.
And not only that, but the breath that I had.
Mhm.
And it was like preparing me, without knowing this, of course, ahead of
Mhm.
time, that I was going to teach the power of breath and what
Yeah.
breath means, not as just a survival mechanism, but as a tool, as an instrument, as a catalyst for
Mhm.
awakening and
Mhm.
expansion. And
Yeah.
so from that point forward, I started to dive into breath work. And from there, I mean, it's been, several years now, and it's just become such a powerful, one of the most powerful healing modalities that I've ever interfaced with, and that I teach.
Yeah. That's beautiful, man. Dude, yeah, I'm completely on board with, and we could go down rabbit holes, right? But like for me, the idea of near death experience, and or astral projection, right? Or, whatever, lucid dreaming, UFOs or whatever, UAP, like somehow consciousness, somehow all this shit connects, right? And there is some kind of an element of simulation thing going on here, and the more we adopt that reality, like we see the benefit, the idea of letting go, right? Just in general, the art of surrender, the path of letting go is just like, that's pretty much it. Your triggers are your teachers. Here we go. But I am curious to learn more, because like for me in my journey, most of my progress, not to discount the breath, because obviously every breath has kept me here, and I've definitely done some breathing techniques, but a lot of like my shifts have come off the back of just, a lot of other forms of mindfulness, and practicing that ongoing awareness of my resistance and reparenting myself in those moments, and setting up my morning and evening for success, and exploring deeper parts and sharing it with the world my way. And like, so I know that I'm growing, but I also realize that we're going to continue to do this for the rest of our life, and that implementing more dialed in breathing techniques could take me to a whole nother level. And so I'm really, really excited again for the opportunity to learn from you. So what breathing techniques would you say, for someone like myself, would be good to, as they say, get deeper in touch with the self? I feel like I've cultivated quite a relationship with myself, but to like maybe kind of tease more deep into the spiritual essence of divinity kind of deal, like what kind of breathing technique would you recommend in that category?
Yeah, I'd say actually, before I share the breathing techniques and things you can do, maybe be beneficial for the listener to dive into a little bit of the energetics and metaphysics of breathing and what that does,
Oh yeah,
if that's what your audience is also
yeah.
interested in.
I love it. Let's do it.
Cool. So I break this down in my book, Master Your Breath, Transform Your Life, and I have a whole chapter on expanding your consciousness through breath.
Mm-hmm.
So the breath, if you explore it, right, I mean, it's been with us, with all living things for all of eternity. You're alive, you have a breath, right? So that's number one. Number two is there's ways to alter your breathing to create enhanced or altered states. Now, most of us are not taught this, where the breathing is just an automatic function. It keeps us alive. It's a lifeline. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
However, ancient cultures, across the board, if you study ancient Egyptian culture, if you study ancient Greece, if you study ancient Hawaiian culture, if you any of the shamanic Native American cultures, what were they doing? They were all working with their breath in some form or fashion because they knew that this was an unlock to reaching these higher states of consciousness. Now, there's a lot that's spoken in many of the ancient texts as well. So if you go back to the Vedic texts and all of that, they speak a lot about breath. And who were the people of those times? It was the rishis. And the rishis, they were part of this enlightened society. And they were using their breath to travel, to gain visions, to allow them to have these visions and then integrate them and help to steward their culture and their community to greater heights of consciousness. And so again, it's been across the board for thousands of years, different conscious breathing techniques that people can use. Now, through this process, what's actually happening when we're intentionally and consciously breathing? We are essentially opening our energetic channels. Okay. So, yes, from a base level, a physiological level, we're resetting the nervous system, but the nervous system is the control mechanism. It's the central command for everything. And so, one, there becomes a deeper calm, a deeper relaxation, right? That's number one. That leads to deeper presence, right? Feeling a deeper connection. You're in the moment, you're in the now. The mind isn't running as it normally is, it's slowed down. And now you're beginning to open up the channels, right? And we can talk from the point of chakras, which is these 7 energy points, or perhaps even more, depending upon your viewpoint, as
Mm-hmm.
well as the nadis, right? And these nadis are these different channels that run on the left, right, and up the middle of our spine. Now, when we're breathing and we're doing this in a repetitive way, we begin to open the channels up. Okay. And so there's been a lot of research now that science has backed this. And one of the most recent bodies of work that I've been diving into, and I share this in my book, is by Dr. Moro Zapatera. And he went to Harvard and did a dissertation on cerebral spinal fluid. Now, to a Western medical professional, this might just be fluid that carries, certain particles of information up and down the spine. Okay. And of course, it supports the brain and has this beautiful layer which the brain can sit in. But there's much more to this. So I had this experience in a dark room. I did a 5-day dark room experience in 2022. And I couldn't quite explain what happened. But to keep it short, I was doing conscious breathing within this experience, 5 days in total blackness. And through that, the secretion of melatonin in my third eye, my vision began to awaken, and I was full on clairvoyant. I could see everything. One of the things that I perceived was these light particles that were moving from the base of my spine all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
And these light particles were essentially like turning on my DNA, right? It was like the activation of my genetic code.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I kept breathing, the more the light began to expand. And so now, 2 years after that, I discover Dr. Moro Zapatera's work and CSF and the role that it plays in helping us to awaken, because then it goes into the third eye, into the pineal gland. And so this fluid is actually carrying so much energy. And through that, we begin to have these profound awakening experiences that are oftentimes can't be explained by science because there's no really words to put to them. They're
Yeah.
very personal experiences.
Yeah.
So in short, and again, I could go so deep on this, but I'm going to keep it here, is
Yeah.
that the breath is one of the most powerful mechanisms and tools for expanding our consciousness and reaching these higher states.
Hmm.
Now, as far as a technique is concerned, and this would be maybe taught with some caution, because those that aren't maybe as experienced can
Hmm.
have a really profound experience and not be able to explain it right, and or
Hmm.
perhaps even create a little bit more anxiety or fear. But
Yeah.
as we were talking about before in the beginning, some of the holotropic technique, which is in and out through the mouth, it's almost like a hyperventilation method. And this is like a fast track to the secretion of this fluid, as well as oftentimes people report these like DMT type of states, right? Where you're
Right.
starting to see fractals and all of that.
Hmm.
Now, I would say after about even 10, 15, 20 minutes of just that breathing like that, you will start to feel the tingling. You will start to feel the buzzing, and you will start to even feel, and many people have reported, I've even experienced myself, where your body starts to lift and you begin to have this sort of higher vantage point of like your soul, if you want to
Yeah, yeah.
call it that.
Remote, like remote viewing kind of deal.
Perhaps, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So that technique specifically in and out through the mouth is a very quick and fast track to having these altered states of consciousness. Now you can do it for, usually the method that I facilitate on my app and everything is just in through the nose, out through the mouth. You can still reach those states. It might just take you a little longer. But the
Hmm.
in and out of the mouth, that holotropic style,
Hmm.
it's a catapult.
So, what about for someone like I was kind of pointing at earlier, right? Like someone who might be uh, there's a greater chance of them getting anxiety for whatever reason in their daily life. They're at that space in life. Is
Uh-huh.
this a breathing technique that potentially could push more anxiety, or no?
It definitely could.
Yeah.
If it's not done in and you don't have an experience, with these different breathing techniques, it definitely could. That's why I always recommend, doing more of the holotropic type of breathing is better to be done under the supervision of a trained facilitator.
Hmm.
Unless, you've been breathing for a while and you're advanced, you understand the mechanism of breath and how it works, then, I mean, I'm doing these all the time on my own. But again, I've been doing this for a long time and I know kind of what to expect. Now, the other thing with this too is just a precaution is that it can start to wake up energy, stored energy that you didn't know was there. So, for
Hmm.
example, a lot of people have reported, and I've even experienced this myself, where I'll have, for lack of better terms, we talk about kundalini, right? What is kundalini? Kundalini is this foundational energy that's within all of us.
Hmm.
And the awakening experience that a lot of people have is they report it like a serpent, right? Like a snake moving up the spine from the root all the way to the crown.
Hmm.
Well, when this begins to happen and you awaken this energy, not only are you awakening stored trauma and emotions that are within the body, but all of this energy that stored needs to be released. And that often comes with convulsions or shaking. I think I had one time it was like 4 to 5 hours of pure shaking. And
Hmm.
at first, when you don't know what it is, it can be quite alarming and scary, but it's the release of this energy. And so, again, I speak about this in my book as well. It's just to be met with precaution when you're doing these practices because they can be quite powerful.
Because I've heard that before that certain breathing techniques can be basically akin to certain psychedelics.
100%. 100%. It's the medicine that's within us that most of us knew we never had. It's like it's it's so profound, and I've dabbled in many different types of plant medicines and psychedelics, and I've reached the same or similar states with my breath alone.
Yeah, yeah. I think that from my perspective, you have to get there, or maybe your life, an individual leading up to a certain point was the recipe for it, for you're able to get there. But like a historical version of myself, for instance, super analytical, logical mind, hard-headed, stubborn, right? Like I don't know if it would do it that quick for me. I think that I'd have to like get myself to, I think now where I'm at, maybe. Now where I'm at, if I do this, it might be doing, and I'm curious to try it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the technique. The fast track technique is the in and out of the mouth. It kind of shuts down that left brain quite quickly, and you
Hmm.
stay on that pace. And it's good to have someone with you that's doing it and kind of coaching you through that, because then you can
Hmm.
really dive in. Unless
Yeah.
again you're experienced and practiced, but that will be a really quick path to it. Now, there is the application of combining breath and plant medicine, which I do and facilitate alongside Ryan Sprague and Breathe with Cannabis. Cannabis and breath are a beautiful marriage. They work very well together, and they really can assist you in reaching those states quicker.
Hmm.
But again, we do those under our own guidance and supervision, because it can be quite intense. I mean, people have even reported having ayahuasca type of experiences using
Yeah.
those two medicines together, breath and cannabis.
Yeah, I know it's. I was going to ask you about that a little bit too, because I've been to one of those events, the Breathe with Cannabis, but I know you guys also have done a few of those events, like in person, like live in person
Yep.
versions of it. And so, in those events, I'm assuming you probably experience some of that there.
Oh yeah, I mean, virtually as well as in person, people have
Yeah,
very transformational and profound experiences.
yeah,
It can be quite powerful.
yeah. Man, so I don't know if this secretion thing is in the same camp of thought, and I'm paraphrasing this, but as I understand it, individuals that have some element of faith in their consciousness, that they actually activate an area of neural activity that those who don't have a belief in something outside, some kind of faith, something that they don't have, right? And that this neural activity that's fired up, it yields immunity and other like positive benefits or something. So I don't know. When you were talking about that, I didn't know if maybe those two lines connected or if they're different.
It's quite possible. I mean, everybody, depending upon your belief system, it really, that's the great thing about breath, right? It transcends belief system. It transcends religions. It's
Yeah,
literally
yeah,
it's a direct experience, right? And in
yeah,
shamanic terms, right? And when we speak to these different experiences we have, it's all about that direct connection that you have with it, right? And whatever you want to name it, right? You can name it God, you can name it source, you can name it universe, you can name it whatever you want. But
mhm,
there is this higher power that you are connected to. And
yeah,
you find that out quickly when you have these experiences. They don't lie, because it is
yeah,
so direct that you're interfacing with this higher mind, this higher power.
yeah. It took for me like a lot of training my mind to believe that based on looking in, more recent like science revelations I'm sure you're aware of, right? And epigenetics and quantum physics and all the things, right? Like the Nobel Prize winner in 22 that it basically, and I'm paraphrasing that too, but what they proved was that reality as we've historically known it is an illusion and that it's not what we've historically thought it was, but it's like that just flies under the surface because people are like, yeah, Trump and Kamala stuff. And it's like, dude, you see, like, what? So, yeah, man, I'm with it, man. The further along that I went on my journey of like redirecting all of my negative narrative and freeing myself gradually that way, the more I became open. Like, for instance, I've been coaching now for a couple years, but I don't think I would have been ready for this conversation with you 6 months ago. I think
Mhm.
that I've now reached this space where like I'm ready to have this conversation now, and I'm so thankful that it's with you. You know, so yeah,
Well, I'm happy to have this conversation, man. And it's really, again, when you start tapping into these different layers and you go deeper into this, you find yourself in a few places. One, I would say, one of the greatest benefits of breath is that deeper connection to yourself, right?
mm,
Not your ego self, but your core
mm-hmm,
self, your soul
mm-hmm,
self. And
mm-hmm,
that is what I believe is the greatest issue we have in this world is a disconnection issue. We are so connected to the material and to the ego and all of that because we've been programmed and conditioned into that state. But when
Mhm.
we go deeper and we dig deeper into ourselves and we travel our own inner landscapes, we find out there's so much more here and available for us.
Yeah.
And once we are, accepting of that and receiving of that, allowing of that, our
Yeah.
life begins to change because we start to anchor into a deeper level of purpose and fulfillment.
Yeah, amen, dude. Um, just real quick, because I feel like sharing my perspective, like the analytical mind, the way that like I would help myself get along is looking at something like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. If you go to like Chat GPT or something and you say, "Hey, give me the top principles out of Think and Grow Rich," which right, is like one of the top selling self help books of all time. And if you look at the summary of what the principles are that it teaches, there are aspects of it that sound metaphysical, that sound beyond tangible reality. And so, historical versions of myself, and I know many people, if they read it, they're like, come on, there's no way that that's how the fucking world works. And they kind of cast it to the side and they keep going. But the reality is, it is how the world works. But there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's these different principles that appeal to different, there's core principles that are across the board the same. And people say them different ways, but they're all the same. Now, use the example of Think and Grow Rich, right? And we can dial deeper into those core principles. But at the end of the day, again, I can draw everything back to the breath. And I even write about this as well in the following chapter of expanding your consciousness. I get into manifestation and
Mhm.
how you create your reality. You are
Mhm.
literally breathing your reality into existence at all times. Now, of course, your beliefs, your thoughts, your energy, your actions, your words all go into that, but it is all fueled through your breath. What
Mhm.
reality are you breathing into in existence? Oftentimes we are breathing a reality that is living within our subconscious mind where all of our fears, worries, doubts are stored. And so we're repeating that all of the time. But
Yeah.
reality, what is it? It's a projection of consciousness that
Right.
stems from the inside out. And so when we change the inside and we repattern and rewire ourselves through the process, like one of conscious breathing, we can
Mhm.
begin to then perceive and experience a new reality.
I love that, man. I've always historically looked at it first and foremost from the what you speak, right? What you say, the power of words, and obviously the power of sound. But it only makes sense that you tie in breath with that because in the breath is vibration, is rhythm, is sound. Is it's all of that. So it's your breath and your voice. You know, but obviously not only external, internal.
Exactly. Exactly. And yeah, that's the key. It's all internal.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, I wanted to take a moment to dive in just for a second into the beats and breath thing. I think that that's a super fascinating thing, and we'll put links to stuff down below for your book and everything. Being transparent, I have not read it. I've digested a lot of your content. I've spent a little bit of time with you and Ryan on that thing, but I will check it out definitely now for sure. But yeah, man, where was the next thought going there? I had it and
Beats
then
and
it
breath.
left. Yeah, that's it. Beats and breath. Right. Beats and breath. Yeah. How did that come about? Where did that start from? And can you tell a little bit more about it?
Yeah, again, speaking on the thread, we'll carry it forward in manifestation, right? And creating your reality. So in 2020, global lockdown, all the shit's happening. And I'm in Buffalo, New York, where I'm originally from. And I just finished my third breathwork training online, and we are gathering together as like underground, men's circles and all these different groups that we're having. And it was beautiful. I had a great community, even amidst all the chaos happening in the world. And
Yeah.
at this one event, I was facilitating breathwork, and there was about 30 guys there. And there's one of the guys that were in attendance, his name is Johnny. He just got back from New York City,
Mhm.
who he's told to come back home. He had like a past life regression he did on a YouTube video
Mhm.
alongside some cannabis, and had this profound awakening experience. He was told to go back to Buffalo. He gets there, does this breath work, and has a similar experience. And he comes up to me after, he goes, "Dude, who makes your music?" And because I was using music with the breath work and all of that, and I said, "No one. I've been looking for someone. Literally 3 months ago, I set an intention. I need to call a musician forward to help birth this vision that I have."
Mhm.
So here Johnny appears, who's a musical savant. I didn't know this at the time. Professional beatboxer, guitarist, pretty much can play any instrument. And within the next 6 weeks, we're creating together. And we create our first concept album, right? An album compilation of 5 elemental inspired breathwork journeys, 33 minutes each, going through the elements: air, water, fire, earth, ether. And we start putting this out, and we start to, facilitate these experiences. And all of a sudden, like, things are catching fire, and we launch this album, we put it out digitally. And a couple months later, which is a story actually I don't really get to tell that much, but I'll share it here, because I feel like it's a good space to do so. We're in a mushroom journey together with some friends, and we're taking psilocybin, and it's like dead of winter in Buffalo. It's February of 2021, and we're going around the circle. And one of my friends had brought this topic up. He goes, if you were a Care Bear, right, from like the 90s, what would your name be?
Mhm.
And everybody's going around saying what their name would be. I'm like, I'm Breath Bear. And Johnny's like, oh, I'm Beats Bear. And then all of a sudden the download came in. It's like Beats and Breath. And
Mhm.
so we came
Mhm.
out of that, and we started our company Beats and Breath. And since then we've been growing our global community, and we created our own sort of technology modality called sonic breathwork, which blends ancient rhythmic breathing techniques, like I
Mhm.
explained in the beginning, with
Mhm.
these cutting edge musical compositions that span through different genres of trap, hip hop, rock, and so forth, and really
Yeah,
making meditation cool, making it fun, right? Because
that's awesome.
most people don't want to sit and just listen to ambient music. Let's
Mhm.
bring some activation into this and really bring forth some really powerful healing experiences. So
Yeah.
from there, we've been now 4 years. We have an app we launched last year, and now we have a breathwork facilitator training. Our first cohort's now going through, and yeah, it's just been a really beautiful experience. And it's just all from following the passion and
Yeah.
from the vision of
Yeah.
really wanting to help the world.
Make an impact service, right? It's,
Yep.
dude, I love that. That's something that I've more and more realized the further along I go is it's always service first.
Yep.
It's
The,
always service first.
the greatest question you can ask yourself, and this is a question from the Gene Keys, another body of work that I teach on: how can I be of the greatest service to the whole? If you ask yourself that question every day for 30 days, you'll
Mhm.
receive an answer. And that answer is the direction in which you're meant to move, because through service, you create more prosperity in your
Yeah.
life and the lives of others. And
Yeah.
so we are meant to be of service to others.
Yeah. It's like some of us have to go through a lot of shit in order to see that, though. We have to go
Oh, of
through a lot of
course.
shit first to see it, you know?
I've gone through many years of dark nights and everything else, but
Yeah.
that question is a fast track to really understanding that you have a set of gifts. You came here with a embedded way of sharing your energy, and
Mhm.
through that you can really help and support other people, and that looks different across the board, right?
Yeah.
Breathwork is one of the many modalities I use to support people, but we
Yeah.
all have gifts within us that we can use.
Yeah. And I'm assuming you would agree. It's like the more that an individual goes down the process of letting go of the limiting aspects of whether it's beliefs or experiences, trauma, or whatever, the more clearly they can see what that is.
100%. And that's, like you said in the beginning, to your point, I believe all of life is just a process of letting go. That's why
Mhm.
we're here, right?
Yeah,
It's to let go. And it's to let go of all the internal paradigms and structures we've created that are in falsehood, right? That are aligned with the ego,
yeah,
and really come into contact with our soul. And
yeah.
through that, we begin to live a more, pure, humble, and very purposeful life.
Yeah, agreed. Would you also say, but it's not about it's not about the eradication of the ego. I like to look at it as it's more like taming, nurturing, and training. Because there's certain egoic aspects related to the avatar, right, that serve us, and
Yep.
that are part of the whole thing, you know. But it's like the more you let go and grow and just adopt the narrative that it's always changing and where you're clinging is an area that you could probably grow. You don't have to choose each one, but fucking choose some of them and see what happens, kind of thing.
Absolutely. I'm in total alignment with that. I've never been about the eradication or killing of the ego. I don't really like those terms. I think
Yeah.
it's more of the integration of the ego. And I always, with my clients and people I work with, I say, okay, who's driving your car, right?
Hmm.
Most of the time the ego's in the driver's seat, and maybe the soul's in the back seat or whatever, right? And your
Hmm.
inner child's in there somewhere, and all of these different aspects of yourself. But
Hmm.
how can we get the ego to just move into the passenger seat for a little bit and have the soul take over and drive? The ego
Hmm.
can still have a say, and it's a part of this human experience, but where it's not controlling to the degree where it's sabotaging your life, because that's what
Yeah.
the ego likes to do. It's
Yeah.
scared, it's in
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
So how can we just move it over just one, seat to the right?
Yeah, yeah, bit by bit, right? So, well, there's a thousand ways to skin a cat, which I love saying. But one of those ways would be, working with you, reading your book, or checking out the Beats and Breath. I'm curious, the Beats and Breath route. Like, if we were to walk through, is it, someone's like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to give one of these a shot. Like, how easy it for them to go and start listening to it?
Yeah, we our app, right? So we have close to 100 breathwork sessions on our app. We have meditation, sound healing, all of that. All the beautiful thing about what we created, and why I love it so much, is because it can be approached from a beginner to an advanced practitioner, and both people can have equally as powerful experiences. We
Hmm.
don't, there are some more maybe advanced breathing techniques that we have on there scattered throughout the app, but for the most part, everything is very approachable. So anybody that goes on and downloads the app, right? We have tutorial videos that you can watch. And then we have a free 7-day breathwork challenge that
Hmm.
people can engage with. And then we have a different number of practices that range from 3 minutes all the way up to 44 minutes.
Hmm.
So it just all depends on what you're looking for. And again, it can be approached from beginner to advanced.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So to kind of bring us to a fold here, and then if it's all right with you, when we wrap this up, maybe spend just a couple more minutes together before we part ways today. But a question that I get a lot, not as much these days, but in combination of cannabis and anxiety, right? And I believe you would agree with me that when anxiety is present in association with cannabis, it's just the illumination of something deeper that is yet to be explored or let go of, right? And that it's nothing to run from, but rather to embrace, experience, process, and allow. But that being said, I'm certain that you probably have, or I would think that you would probably have some kind of a breathing exercise that would be good for someone who's not quite there yet. And they are having an experience with cannabis where they're freaking out. Maybe they took a little bit more the first time they've done it or something, and they're not dialed into the work yet. What would you, if you got on the phone with that person, what would you tell them? What would you tell them to do?
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment. Everybody likes to blame the plant or blame this or that. It's just an illumination of what's already in there.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, cannabis or not, right? A breathing technique that works every single time for anxiety. So it's an extended exhale. So it's a 4 count inhale through the nose and an 8 count exhale. So you're blowing like you're blowing out like a straw, right?
Uh-huh.
Through a straw. Your lips are pursed, and all through that, the 4 count in through the nose, slow and steady, and the 8 count out, that slows everything down. And just again, 10, 15 of cycles of that breath will really support in calming the system down.
Yeah.
That's a great breath for calming and for anxiety.
Beautiful, beautiful, dude. Well, in the moment, I feel inspired to ask you one final question. Is there anything in particular that you envision for your future currently that is, you know, exciting for you to talk about, and what you perceive you're headed towards?
Yeah, personally, you mean?
Yeah, or vision. Yeah, vision of your world in the future. What's going on? I don't know. Whatever feels
Yeah,
good to
yeah,
you. You know,
yeah. I will. I'll kind of tie this in individually and collectively because they go hand in hand. So
agreed.
collectively, we are, inevitably in this massive timeline shift. There's a massive change happening across the earth, and that may look externally like chaos and destruction right now. But that is the shadow being revealed, the shadow, the collective shadow that we haven't wanted to face. And that shadow will form itself in many different ways that may not look very pretty. And we have to, as humans, go through this process of alchemy and transformation in order to get to the other side of what people may perceive or call the new earth, or a higher frequency, a higher dimension of consciousness, and all of that. Now, I truly believe we're creating our reality individually every single day, and we're choosing these different infinite parallel earths that are available to us. And
Hmm.
really, the two choices come down to this: fear or love. Okay,
Right.
fear. What is fear? Separation, constriction, tightness, closeness, all of that. Love is openness, it's unity, it's all of the beautiful things that we already are.
Hmm.
Now, through that choice, we are creating the timeline that we want to be on. Now, as we see in the world right now, with everything, the systems and structures dissolving and coming down, it may create a lot of fear because we've been hanging on in this control way to all of the things that have been here for so long.
Hmm.
But we have to, in really this beautiful conversation, we have to let go and to allow something new to sprout from the dirt, from the soil. And so, me personally, I'm on a mission to impact as many people as I possibly can through my voice, through my words, through the power of breath. And so, what does that look like, in the 3D? Many things: speaking, writing more, sharing
Hmm.
more, expressing more, and really just allowing the God source, the universal intelligence, to flow through me, to be an open channel and conduit to support the highest good of everybody and all of humanity, so that we may evolve into our greatest version of ourselves. So
Fuck
I'm
yeah.
here for it all. I'm here to be a steward of the new, and bring through that light that is already within us, and to support people and empower people in that.
Yeah, amen, dude. Well, I for one have definitely enjoyed this conversation. I have a thought. In when I have podcast guests in the past, there's times where I'm like, we'll do another episode maybe, but like I have an idea of I think would be a good episode for us to do if you're up for it
Sure,
in the
man.
future at some point. Would be to dive deeper into the idea of consciousness and projection of consciousness and how they are, as above so below. It's a reflection of reflection. Like, so as you do your internal work, your external world does change, but then the analytical mind, wants to come in and say, all right, well, there's plenty of people who have gone very, very far on that path and they're in a really, really good place, but there's still, as they say, quote unquote, terror in the world. And I have like my own, like, way I look at that sort of stuff. But I feel like you and I could do a back and forth in that area of thought that would fill up like an hour. And so if you're up for that, I think that would be great.
Totally down, man. That's all. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the basis of all the work. It's changing the internal reality in order for the external to change. And, that's
Yeah.
what I'm all about. So
Yeah.
100%.
And like I see it now in my life. That idea is something that I would have resisted many, many years ago. but I do see it to be true in my life. But there still is a little bit of that analytical side of the ego who's like, all right, but you know, that's cool, but there's still war in the world and stuff. And I don't think about that shit. Like, I don't watch the news. I tell my clients, like, hey, turn that shit off. Don't look at that. You know, like, just don't look at that shit, right? But still, I like to look at it as my subconscious map of the world is something that I'm always working with and molding and changing as things, you know, and knowing and getting the opportunity to share space with you, I would love to have that conversation with you and to share it with whoever might listen.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really beneficial conversation, and just as a little teaser to that, right? One of my favorite channelers, which I'm very cautious of who to tune into, but Bashar
Sure.
Daryl Anka talks
Mm-hmm.
about this. In the creation of reality, is that the war that you see externally, right? That you're not physically a part of right now. You're not living in Gaza. You're not in these
Right.
different regions,
Right.
but it's like a glass wall, right? You can see through it. You can see that that's happening, right? So there is something to look at there. It's not to fully ignore, but to put all of your attention into that is pulling that towards you, right? And so
Yeah.
there is a way of working with that and molding that, and there's subtleties to this game of mastering your reality, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lot here. So I
Yeah.
think we can absolutely fill up an hour, 2 hours of talking about that.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to bring it to a fold. Generally speaking, don't feed the fear mongering shit. Like,
Yeah.
don't let that in. Just if you know, like the way I'll say it is like if you see a video and it's got that sound, you know, that sound that's always paired with conspiracy theories and shit or whatever. You know it. Like, you hear that, man, don't watch that shit. Go watch something else. You know, like, get rid of the fear mongering. It's that shit is holy shit. Talk about what keeps most people in the matrix, right? But yeah, we could go on. I think that what we covered today is amazing. Are you down to hang out for just a couple more seconds when we wrap up here?
Sure, man.
Awesome. And lastly, where would you have people go if they want to dive in more with you?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, I have multiple different resources, but I think the best place to go is go to my personal website, christopheraugust.co, christopheraugust.co. On that website, I have my free 7-day challenge called Master Your Reality. I have access to the Beats and Breath app under breath work. I have my other courses. I have my book. Everything is on that one site. And then on Instagram, Christopher_August, if people want to follow me. But yeah, those are the two. And then from there, it links out to all of my different resources.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, dude, thank you again so much for hanging out and sharing your experience and your wisdom and your love and your insight and all the good things.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's really been a pleasure. And I really appreciate everything you're doing. And thanks for having me on.
Fuck yeah, dude. Fuck yeah. And for everybody else, thanks for hanging out too. And tune in next time when we dive deeper into the perception of reality.